Welcome one, welcome all to another developer interview here on the Xbox Expansion Pass. Today, I'm joined by Stéphane Restani and Basile Perrenoud of Digital Kingdom about their latest title, Swordship. It came out in December 2022. I'm your host, Luke Lore, the insipid ghost. Stéphane, Basile, thank you both for joining me today.
Hello,
Hey,
thanks.
thanks for inviting us.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you guys. You have one of the coolest games and most unique games that I've played in a long time. I hesitate to try and describe it to audio listeners because it's just so unique. And I'm curious to know, how do you guys describe your game?
That's a good one. I think the tagline we stuck to it is a dodge 'em up. So it's essentially kind of a reverse bullet hell. A lot of stuff is attacking you, and you have no means of firing back. The only
Mhm.
thing you can do is use the enemy's fires as against themselves.
Basil, would you agree with that? A reverse bullet hell, a dodge 'em up, as it were?
Yeah, the jam up is the one we sticked with. We actually at first we had what did we use as a tagline to describe it?
We
I
we
don't.
had the coolest boat game ever, but we didn't
Yeah,
really use that one.
yeah. But
The
then we
coolest
weren't sure
boat
it was really the coolest one, so we had to switch to something else. Now, actually, it's we that's when we realized that it was kind of feeling like a bullet hell, even though it wasn't one like a shoot them up. It was feeling like a shoot them up. And then we had this tagline that came up, and it's pretty. I think it explains the game well. Really, yeah. You have to
Yeah.
dodge everything.
A dodge 'em up really does kind of suit because that is truly what you're doing. And I love that, Stefan, you pointed out how you can manipulate enemies into shooting each other. Part of this game, though, reminds me of like anti gravity racers, like maybe the old Wipeouts or Extreme G or something like that. Tell me about the game's origins. Like, was this what you guys envisioned from the get go?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Go ahead, Basil.
Yeah, actually, from the beginning, you say Wipeout and those kind of games, and that's fun because at the beginning we wanted to have like a racing game. We were doing, we tried doing some prototypes with things where you looked on the ship like in a race game from behind, and you go really fast and you try to avoid obstacles. And then we wanted to have enemies trying to get you, and we realized it was not possible to look in front of you, avoid obstacles, then having enemies coming behind, and everything was just so difficult to follow. So yeah, it's right, it has this vibe of, people said, like burnout as well, you know.
Hmm.
It has that kind of vibe, but actually it's at the end it was not the game at all to do a race, so we removed that part and we switched the camera and we said, okay, actually let's forget about the race, it's just enemies coming, but still you're going to be, you're driving really fast, but you never need to turn anywhere. There is no track to follow.
Yeah, that game went through a whole lot of different setups. I think I remember once we sat in a Starbucks with you, Basil, and we discussed various ideas because we knew we wanted to make a sort of boat racing ish kind of game.
Hmm.
And yeah, we were talking about something highly inappropriate with drug smuggling and that kind of stuff. Um, and then yeah, we ended up doing some weird things with obstacles to avoid in front of you, enemies coming at the back behind you. We had a like we iterated with an open world on water kind of thing, which didn't really work out. And then yeah, we settled on the on this thing with the camera in the front and enemies coming from the back, and that's where the kind of bullet hell dodge 'em up thing came up.
Now, how long between from like inception to prototyping to landing on the vision that you got now? What's the timeline of events on that?
Ooh, I think the prototype, what we spent some months
More
on
more
it,
than a year.
and then we changed the direction, and then when we decided what we wanted to do, we had like some more 6 months of prototyping for the real thing. But before we tried like the open world stuff and everything, that was also like 6 months or something, so it's at least 1.5 year, I guess. And then how much, 3 years of development. Not sure.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years, I think, yeah, of development. Not, yeah,
So you guys are looking ballpark around like a 4-year total time? And was that a fair
Yeah, I think
point?
that's
yeah,
right.
roughly. Though we're not all full time on the game, so that's why it's been taking a bit longer. Our studio also does like contract work and extra stuff on the side.
Mhm.
So we're not always committed all the developers on the game at once.
That's interesting. So you guys are dividing your time between being, I don't know, I don't mean this in a demeaning way, a support studio as well as kind of creating your own project.
It's not really a support studio because we it's still our own creations that we make,
Mhm.
but it's made for clients. So it's games to learn stuff or to bring a message somewhere.
Mhm.
Mainly, we make a lot of games for museums, and
Oh.
sometimes it's closer to interactive software than games, depends on what the job is. Um, that kind of
Yeah,
small screens you have in museums with display of information, where it's usually it's kind of gamified, and sometimes it's always it can almost be a full game, or it is some real real games that we make where
Mhm.
you can actually take a controller and play with your friends. We had some of those for clients as well.
yeah, and VR stuff for the police in Switzerland. That was a fun one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Now see, that's cool. Do you guys take a lot any lessons learned from say doing like a museum project or a VR project for the police? Do lessons from that make their way into your other projects,
Yeah,
swordship or otherwise?
Yes,
completely. Yeah, so
and
we learn a lot from that. Also, I think one of the cool thing with this is we get to start new projects with like we can use the cutting edge coolest tech every time because we don't fear that it's getting deprecated in 1 year or whatever. We can just jump on all of the cool stuff right away,
Mhm.
and then we'll use those learnings for the next games that we make, and also what we do in games. Like, as we get better at doing games, we also get better at doing those contract work. So I think it's a
Interesting.
virtuous cycle.
Does the I feel like I would know the answer to this, but I don't. When you guys are making projects for the police, for VR, police, museums, contract stuff, are those using like the same game engines that you would use to make Swordship?
yep, yeah, it's the same. I think it's even the same version for many projects, so we don't have to switch between versions. And there are a couple of tools we reuse from one to another. So some of the coding libraries we have might be also present in Swordship and in client projects.
That's really neat. That's really neat. Now, talk to me a little bit about Swordship's art style because once again, I hesitate to try and describe it to audio listeners because it's really unique. It's a really neat like color palette pop as well as a camera angle thing. And I think you guys mentioned and alluded to this camera angle in the beginning anyway with the perspective.
Yes. So the art style. So you don't have any artists here. So I mean, if our lead artist listens to this podcast, he'll probably kill us. But I'll go ahead and try to give it a shot. So I think he got inspired. Yeah, as you mentioned, by Wipeout. And like he reread some time ago a comic book, a French one called the Golden City, which is
Hmm.
about a city submerged in water and people exchange goods on boats, and that was one of the references. And then also there was so the all the art style is super low poly and very simplistic. So
Hmm.
that's the two reasons for this is on one side, since we were a small team, it helps on yeah, keeping up the iteration speed high and being able to deliver all of the assets that we need. And also we wanted to get everything really simple and readable because we're making a game that's quite demanding on what you see. You need to focus on what's happening. So we need stuff to be highly readable and not super detailed because that kind of distracts the eye. So yeah, everything is pretty simple in that for that.
I think once we had like someone asking on Twitter or somewhere how do you make, what kind of tech has been used to make this amazing style? It's unique. I've never seen that. What technology is used? Actually, it's just, there is no technology at all. It's just plain colors. You don't texture anything. You just put colors in it, and
Mhm.
that's what Ben, our artist, does. He managed really well this really simple stuff, and it's like really elegant. It's really nice.
Mhm.
Um, I think also it's the first project where we the game designer insisted so much in having. Um, at first, it was a really visual project. Like most of the ideas came from the our artist, but at
Mhm.
some point we had to switch and say, okay, actually the game design is going to be um, the main thing, and everything is in support of that. So the artist had to rethink some stuff, like the boat was red at the beginning and it had to be yellow because red is for negative stuff like enemies, warning zones. So actually one thing that makes it also really work is that any color or element in this visual uh, uh, yeah, artistic direction that we took
Mhm.
is made so that the game design is put forward and that you can understand better what's going on.
Mhm. And one of the things I think that's really distinct about both the art style and the way your game plays, and I'm watching it on my second screen, is how fast you feel like you're going. And Stefan, I think you alluded to this as well, is the sense of speed.
Yeah, which is, I mean, one weird thing is that since we know how the game is made, we know that nothing is actually moving really.
Mhm.
The water is just a scrolling plane, and the ship is really static. You're just moving left, right, up, down,
Mhm.
so you're never really leaving the central zone of the game. So one of the challenges was to make, give back this feeling of speed. And there have been there have been a lot of like tiny challenges to get all that right. Getting
Mhm.
the water scrolling correct, and the scenery that we have on the sides to scroll nicely with this. I think we also have in the slow motions scenes, when the
Mhm.
camera angle cuts, we're slowing everything down as well. Like so the decor slows down, and
Mhm.
then once the camera gets back up, everything um, accelerates again. So the time slows, but we also slow down on top of that the rest of the game.
Yeah, one other fun stuff is that we wanted it to go really fast, but for it to feel kind of realistic, when you kill an enemy and there is an explosion, it has to then scroll back because the enemy stops moving when you kill it and it goes back. But if you're going too fast, you don't see that happening because it's just the explosion is leaving too fast for you to see the fumes and see the smoke. So actually, the plane on which you play is scrolling as at a lesser speed than the elements outside of the game area. If you look at the scenery outside, it's scrolling faster to give you this sense of going fast, but the center part of the screen is scrolling slower, and
I do see that.
you almost don't realize it when you that the water plane is going to always scroll at the same speed, but the scenery, the objects are going faster. That's just helping you a bit, feeling that you're going really fast.
That's really neat. I don't think I ever would have picked up on that, but as I'm watching, because I'm watching the gameplay, it does feel like the debris and such that are on the sides is flying by faster. Um, and I'm also really fascinated by like the trail that goes behind the ship as you go through the water, like the way that animates
So
feels really cool too. Now you
Yeah,
two are
that's
laughing, which means
I,
there's
I I
something
think
there.
so. This one has a long history. I think that was the first element that we, even before we knew we wanted to make a boat game. I think our artist knew he wanted a trail somewhere somehow. So we iterated with rocket ships, um, other kinds of stuff, and then we fell into a boat that has a wake
yeah.
behind it.
He wanted, and I was really sold to the idea. I loved it as well. That you want to have the feeling that it's really smooth, and that helps a lot seeing this trail behind you. But the
Mhm.
fun thing is that at the beginning it was huge because it was important for the visual art that we wanted to have. So it was really huge, and it's one of the things the game designer said that we had to tweak down a lot because the player needs to see what's going on. So it was twice as big at the beginning.
Yeah, because if you were in front of an enemy, then you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see what the enemy is doing anymore. So yeah, we had to tone that down. It was it was a tiny drama that we had to reduce it. There were also a lot of fun stuff with slow motions because
Mhm.
that's a custom. So the trail is a custom thing that we built for that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's kind of emitting frames of vertices that move a bit around with some noise.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, we realized, I think pretty late, I think like 2 weeks before release or something, that if you use the bullet time action, like it's a power that you can use in the game. If you
Mhm.
used it and moved the ship around, the ship's trail was just completely effed. Like it was,
Oh no.
yeah, completely all over the place. And the art,
That's
our artist had never noticed this, and yeah, everybody in the team was just like, "Oh man,
panicking,
if he doesn't say it's broken, then it works as he intends to."
right?
So yeah, we fixed that a bit last minute.
I noticed that when you talk about slow motion, on some occasions when it goes into slow motion, uh, the camera angle shifts. Does that kind of go back to the early vision of the game where you can see behind you a little bit because it doesn't go fully, but it does seem to like kick down so you can see enemies behind you as the explosion happens.
Yeah, but it's just for the, it's just to be cool. I mean, that the original idea was that you would use what's behind. Here, you're not. We don't expect the player to actually make any use of this camera to see something new or understand
Mhm.
the world better. It's really just to have. But we from the start we knew if we wanted the game to look cool, we needed to have some cool effects. So that's kind of part of it. Like we had many movies for inspirations, like the James Bond movies, where he's driving his car and you see the other cars chasing behind,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So we knew the camera would need at some point to show you explosions or cool stuff.
Yeah, there was a bit of Mad Max as well, I think, in the movie's references. And
Mhm.
but yeah, those cameras are just for show off.
Gotcha. I got a vibe of like I talked about Wipeout and such, but I also thought about Spy Hunter. So when you say the James Bond stuff, because in Swordship there's missiles and stuff flying around at you, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Uh, the enemy design to me is really neat because you have to play the enemies against one another, but there's also a simplicity to it that makes sense. And so as the player is going through, some of the enemies have like columns of fire that you have to avoid. Others, you have to make them shoot at one another. Uh, did you guys play around with that design much, or did it kind of just fall into place?
That was a bit, yeah. There was a lot of iterations on that as well. I think the only enemy that, no, not even, yeah, the gunner, so the one that shoots a bullet at you. I think that's the second one we had in the game. The first one we had was, yeah, something that was kind of aiming at you and then dashing itself at you, and you had to avoid it. It was called the Dasher, and this one evolved into the flying one that shoots at you,
Mm-hmm.
somehow through weird iterations. But yeah, no, the design in the end with bullets and beams, those columns, or we call them beams,
Mm-hmm.
and fire, all of that kind of was born in blood, roughly. Yeah, it was all like painful iterations of trying something. It's not working. We need to simplify it. We can't understand it. Yeah, there were a lot of iterations to get this
I think it started
simple.
falling in place when we realized that we could start categorizing the enemies. Like some of those are aiming at you by well, some of those are aiming and some are not aiming at all. They are just static and they are going to stay there. And that's the first category. And inside those that are aiming, there are those that aim by rotating on themselves, and so it's like the one with the lasers that's like it's rotating,
Mm-hmm.
and there are those that are panning the world like X and Y on two axes to find you, and that that kind of categorization helps say, okay, we already have that kind of enemy, but we don't have that kind of combination of enemies, so we have to find out more stuff to do, to put some new things together. So it
Mhm.
helped find the place we could add some stuff instead of, because at the beginning you think you have a new enemy in mind and you're just doing the same thing that you already have. You just replaced the effect by something else and it looks cool, and you realize you can't really use it differently than what you already created.
Gotcha. That makes good sense. That makes good sense. Now, is Swordship is a roguelike, but is it kind of? No?
Yeah, it is, but we actually stopped. That's when we found the dodge 'em up tagline, because
Mm.
actually it gives the wrong idea. Because usually roguelikes are not that nervous, and you can also, you can maybe take your time, and
Mhm.
it's usually also more like 2D platformers, or it's not really giving the right idea. But yes, the mechanic behind the loop is a roguelike.
Does that imply procedurally generated levels as well?
Kind of, the enemy spawns is random, but
Mhm.
it's not too much random. I think Stefan has a lot of
Yes,
stuff
yeah,
to
we
add.
can talk about this all day. So that one is pretty fun. Because prior, like Basil said, that at some point we started to really be able to identify properties of each enemies and know this one works because it's doing this one works because it's doing that. It has this effect on the player and it allows this or this that action. But before that, we had really nothing. So the spawner was just like randomly spawning enemies at some rate, and it was not fun. So yeah, we ended up. I think that's one piece that we ended up rewriting the most in the code base, really, because yeah, our game designer just came up and said it doesn't work. I've play tested this with some friends. They don't understand anything. It's not fun. We need to rewrite this. So yeah, this has been through a lot of iterations to really get right.
But in the current state, I think it's still random, but you have a lot of rules that will constrain it. So
Yeah.
at any point, there are enemies that have to be there, and you have also enemies that cannot be there, and you have an amount of maximum enemies depending on what they do that can come together. So there are a lot of constraints that helps you guarantee that if you replay, it's going to be random, but it's still going to be the same difficulty. It's going to be the same feeling. And it also means that when you unlock new types of enemies or new levels, then you find some new stuff, even though it's still random, but it really feels like a completely different level, even though you kind of have the same enemies coming.
Yeah, but I think yeah, the core, the well, the outro loop is kind of roguelike. Yeah, yeah, I think it's fair to say.
Now, getting that right has to be tough, though. Like the amount of testing you have to do to get that right, to make the difficulty where you want it and such. Uh, how much time or play testing, or how do you figure that out to get it right to where you want it to be? That fine tuning.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing is the game designer asked us for feedback anytime we played, which I too often failed to do because I was playing without taking notes, and then I didn't remember what I wanted to say. But he was just using kind of a better or worse thing. Like, I changed something in this level. Can you play? And it's better or it's worse. It's giving you the direction to go. So he asked a lot of time that kind of question. Can you try specifically this? And we were playing. And at some point, we had enough people on our Discord channel to find people willing to play and play again.
Mhm.
A couple of guys there played, I don't know how many hours, more than myself, I guess, because they loved it and they provided a lot of feedback. So that was really valuable. But then
Yeah,
on the detail on number of hours spent on game design, I don't know if we should ask the game designer. I think Swordship is the game I realized I couldn't do this job of being a game designer. Before I was like, well, if you like to play, you can always learn, but it's way more than just loving the game, you have to know a lot of stuff to find the right, this perfect, value that's going to be exactly what you want.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot. I think there was a lot of playtests. Sandro, our game designer, really spent a lot of time playing. Also, he's hosting a co-working, and that gives him essentially access to an unlimited pool of always refreshing new guinea pigs to try
Mhm.
the game with. So he was constantly putting the game in the hands of new people. So he
Mhm.
got really fresh insights into how the game is taken. Is it too difficult? Too easy? And I think one neat thing is that we were also aware we were not making a game for everyone. It's a
Mhm.
pretty hard game. So we are also wouldn't say happy, but we are also comfortable with the fact that some people just find it too difficult or just don't play it. But
Mm.
that's a trick. I mean, it's a bit of a it becomes tricky for marketing because we need to communicate that properly to avoid disappointing players.
The idea that no, the game is meant to be difficult. It's for those that want a challenge, but then also you want to sell to that people so they're happy. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now you guys are 3-4 months since release. Do you, does that mean you guys update and go in and change things, or is it just a matter of fine tuning, quality of life? How do you guys approach kind of once the game's out? Because nowadays, once the game's out, rarely is a game just done.
Yeah, well, we still tried to release something that was complete, so you can play it. It's not like it's terrible and you have to wait 2 years to have nice updates. But
Sure.
yeah, we have some fine tunings coming, but also we added a couple of features that's going to be released soon. So we're
Yeah,
still working on something.
yeah. New game mode coming hopefully next month. Yeah,
Gotcha.
depends on playtests.
Sure.
If it's fun, if it's fun fast, then it's good.
Hmm.
If it's a nightmare to balance, then it's gonna take a little more time.
Yeah. At first, we made kind of a roadmap of new ideas we could have, but we knew that it would also depend on the time we can put on the game and also on the success of the game. So right now, it's not sure we will do everything. It's likely that we will start with a couple more features, see how it goes, but we are also trying to explore what we could do as a next project as well.
I heard some people, I say I heard some people, let me rephrase that. As I was looking in and playing the game and doing research on it and such, some people were thinking like leaderboards would be a good fit. I'm curious if you would agree with that, given that there are not a set number of defined enemies on screen, or there are restrictions here and there. Do leaderboards make sense from the guys that are making it? Because outside looking in, I could see arguments either way.
So, so
Yeah.
that's one we have a lot of fun with. So actually, when we is it still the case? Yeah, I think it is. So leaderboards currently unlock if you beat the boss. So the
Ah,
rationale behind this is sort of a how we onboard players into the game. So they need to first learn the basics of the game.
uh-huh.
You start in easy mode, so that should be relatively easy to play. It might be a bit too tough sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the idea is that before you start to focus on leaderboards, first get the basics right, learn how to do a
Mm.
full run, and then you unlock the leaderboards, and then you can compete and get better and try hard. And we the next patch which will just like show the leaderboards button on the main screen because just people get this wrong all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, leaderboards absolutely make sense. They're yeah they are here.
Yeah, it's the core of the game.
People
You
just don't
need a
see it.
leaderboard to go on playing once you beat the boss. You want to be the best player, and there are a lot of ways to gain more points, even though you know you reach the end of the game. So there are leaderboards in the game. We just didn't want to fill them with scores of 1 and 2 for because people will retry and retry. So you only post your score when you end the run, and this is not clear at all in the game. But yeah, like Stefan said in the release, you will see that this exists from the start menu, and then Even at the end of game, if you don't succeed, it's going to be written that when you reach the end, you will be able to push to the leaderboard and have your score online.
I think that's one lesson learned, um, because when you start the game for the first time, you only have, I think, like quit settings and new game, and we found
Mhm.
that to be rather elegant and in line with the rest of the game's design. The rest of the art style is pretty pure and simplistic. There's no distractions, so we
Mhm.
wanted to keep that main menu very dry like that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think the lesson learned is here that players expect to see more, and to really engage in the game, they want to see all of the stuff that the game has to offer, all the potential
Yeah.
fun that it can have with. So yeah,
That's
we're
actually
just
also
showing all that.
something coming in the next update is that you're not only the leaderboards but also the locked content that you have to play to unlock. You're going to have the full list in a really better way, so you can go and have a look at what's remaining to get and what it does and how to get it. So yeah, we're trying to show that uh, there are some stuff in the game that you can unlock if you play a bit, and yeah, it was a bit hidden in this first version. So yeah,
Yeah,
So you talk about like that's something that's coming. Were you guys surprised that players didn't catch some of those things?
yeah, I think
yeah,
so.
yes and no. I mean, we knew from the start that people would people who don't like that kind of, they don't want to try hard, they would give up on the game.
Mhm.
um, but it didn't really occur to us that people would maybe be willing to try more if they saw more stuff. That's something really we've kind of missed out. Now we can fix it.
That makes sense. Like that carrot at the end of the stick. Like, no, it's there. Just
Yeah,
push a little bit
and
harder.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I think I
Gotcha.
think after years of work, we kind of, yeah, that was the last step really. How do we present all of the game's content to players?
Gotcha. Well, when we tweeted out that we were going to be chatting, I had a lot of people messaging me and asking about DLC and if you guys were planning to add stuff to the game. I feel like you've partially answered that, but one of the users, Umbro Witcher, was curious if DLC was something on the horizon. And I don't. Does DLC make sense for what you guys are thinking? Is that something you would want to do? You can
I don't
backflip out of
think
that
there will
question if you don't
be.
want to answer it.
Yeah, no, I don't think there will be a DLC,
Mm-hmm.
or it would have to be for to be something new on it, because the difficulty is the whole game, it is kind of paced and balanced to have that exact amount of levels and that exact amount of enemies. If you
Mm-hmm.
add some, you have to redo everything.
Gotcha.
So it's not really possible to give you some new levels, but it could be possible to give some more play modes, and that's we don't right now. We're more aiming at giving more content for free because the game is, it's expensive enough as it is, so we want to give people a bit more for the
Mm,
price they pay. So paid DLC is not really something we will do.
Gotcha. And you guys are, I mean, you're available on multiple platforms. Uh, was that something that you guys had anticipated doing? Did it catch you off guard? Was it fun to plan for? Like, I would have to think planning a game and releasing a game, especially when you guys are dividing your time the way you were. Um, the idea of one platform might be daunting. Multiple, even scarier.
Yeah, a bit. So we had, so our previous game we released on the Switch, so we had already experience with a bit of porting like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we built, and we knew we wanted to build Swordship for Steam and the Switch because
Mm-hmm.
those were the two platforms that we really knew how to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So we built it from the ground up to be sort of cross-platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we signed with our publisher, and they said they wanted to port it as well to Xbox and PlayStation and all that. So yeah, the game was already sort of in a state where it was possible to port it to the other platforms. And we had a porting studio from Thunderful, Stage Clear, who helped with the porting for Xbox and PlayStation.
Is that a relief at times? The idea that like you have a publisher that will get you a porting studio, or is that some work that you guys had to do?
So I think there was a bit of a timing thing in that I think once the game is ready, you can count a couple of months of porting and then release it.
Mm-hmm.
But here, the release date was approaching and we hadn't finished the game, so we had to keep on working on the game as the other studio was porting it. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a bit of a bit of friction there. So yeah, that was a bit of a fun situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you at the beginning when we talked about having the Xbox and PlayStation, I was like, oh, I wish I would do the PlayStation and the mostly the Xbox port myself because I really want to have done that. And then after a while, I was really glad we had a porting team doing it because we didn't have time at all to try to focus on a new thing that we never did. And there I was really glad. But at the end, I started again feeling a bit. It's suddenly you realize you don't have control on what's happening. So you make new stuff, and you're like, oh, and then I have to tell them there is a new thing to put on PlayStation and Xbox, and I don't know how long it's going to take them to port that,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have any control on it. So it's you have pros and cons. I mean, but yeah, for us, at least it was time saving. We would have spent a lot of time if we had to do that.
So my closing question, I suppose, is not a fair one, and that is, are you guys happy with it? Are you happy with the game?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I'm happy it's out there, but also I think I was the first one telling the game designer that the game I was happy with the game, and if it would release, it would be perfect to me because he never wanted to release because he was always saying there is some stuff to improve. So our game designer actually told me that he will be happy with the game once we do this first update we're going to release.
and
Gotcha.
I'm definitely super stoked with the game. Yeah, the game's reception has been awesome. I'm super happy with what we've shipped. Um, yeah, it's no, it's a pleasure. I'm super stoked.
That makes me really happy to hear because to me, it's one of the coolest looking games. I love seeing, because when you're a content creator and you're putting together stuff and I'm prepping for the interview, I'm watching and listening and as I play it myself. But to me, that it just looks so cool. Like even a GIF of this game, it is just so inviting visually, and it just looks so much fun. Um, it did not tell me how difficult it would be though, which was a fun thing for me. I was like, "Oh, I really gotta focus on this one." But it's a blast, and I'm so happy for you guys, that it's out and that you are happy with it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Well, Basil, Stefan, I need you guys to let people know where they can find the game, let people know where they can find your work and your socials, and in general, if they want to connect with you or check out more of your work, where would they find it?
Wow. So I guess first thing, well, the game is available on Nintendo Switch, Steam, uh, even Epic Game Store, like and GOG
GOG.
Store, and anything, Xbox, PlayStation. So just search for Swordship, and you should find it. And then you have our Discord channel, and I don't know the handle for that.
And I'll put that in the show notes, listeners, for sure, so you guys are able to find that as well.
Awesome.
Oh,
And
yeah,
we're on
I think that's
Twitter
the best way.
at the Kingdom CH.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Any means we can get it.
I'm pretty sure
Get in
we
touch
have
with
an
us.
Instagram as well, but I don't even know it. I don't have Instagram. That's for people drawing things.
Yeah, that's for the fancies. That's for the fancy people. I gotcha. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Do be sure, listeners, to check out their work, Swordship. It's a blast, for sure. Remember, you guys can support the Xbox Expansion Pass over on Patreon, as well as subscribing to us over on the socials as well and YouTube. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you
Thank
a lot.
you.